Number one, I think someone is trying to kidnap my baby. I'm posting this here because I'm out of options and I don't know what to do. I've tried everything. Cameras, extra locks. I even tried learning martial arts. But none of it worked. But whatever, you likely didn't come here to see a bleeding heartache, so I'll get on with it. Hi, my name is Susan. I am 23 years old. I live in a cheap house somewhere in suburban area, California. I am not disclosing my location or anything like that for extremely obvious reasons, but I hope that it still gives you a vague idea of what my situation is. I live with my pet bloodhound, Trevor, and my baby cousin, Maxwell. My uncle was abusing him, so I was the only adult available who could reasonably take him in, as in any of my other relatives were simply dead, poor, or underaged. No significant other, not yet at least. I work as a cleaning woman at a semi-formal restaurant nearby. The pay is great, but it's exhausting. Dealing with the subtle misogyny alongside my coworkers, playing ass grab all day, the work is tough. I have to carry dirty food, scrubbing plates, and clean up after some of the most gluttonous rich people I've ever bore witness to. It's just a mess and then some. Now that you have a vague idea of what my life has been like, let me get into what makes the situation unique. The first sign started when I was working. A man wearing a blank mask and a dark hoodie was walking past my workplace. He looked into my windows, spying on everyone, but he seemed oddly interested in me. I ignored him. He was likely just a mentally ill homeless man looking for food, or a delinquent teenager who wanted to get a scare out of us. So I gave him neither. I ignored the problem, and I acted like it was no big deal. But the situation escalated when one of my short-tempered coworkers spotted him and decided to make him leave. I almost felt bad for the man, seeing him leave the kitchen and confront the 7-foot creep wielding nothing but a spatula and cook clothing. He was a little overboard, screaming at the man to leave. He would watch the cops haul him out of the area and cuff him. The freak did not take kindly to these words, and he proceeded to grab the cook by his neck and lifted him into the air like he was a sack of vegetables, before slamming him on top of the nearby concrete wall. I looked away and called the police and an ambulance. It seems my bit of foresight was very accurate, as once the police arrived, they found that my colleague had been beaten black and blue, with a broken arm and bruises all over his face. His nose had been bashed in too. Obviously, I never saw him afterward. He understandably quit after sustaining those injuries. Granted, he was a minor celebrity with some small public renown for his amazing pasta sauce and exceptional spaghetti cooking. He was even in the newspaper at times, so he likely had another, even better paying kitchen offering him a safer job. I wanted to quit with him, but I needed this job, even though I could barely enter the alley nearby without seeing his broken and bruised face in my mind's eyes. So, I continued working. The weirdo returned but seemed inclined to hide the shadows now, as opposed to the somewhat more confident approach of staring into the windows that he did beforehand. And things remained where they were for at least a month. That was until he showed up at my place. He didn't break in, he didn't threaten me, or make scary noises. He just walked around the neighborhood in a constant loop, always looking when he came by my house. I could only truly describe it as being like someone trying their hardest to be as inconspicuous as possible and only failing slightly. He wasn't always preceded by the moon either. He showed up in the day too, just not as frequently or as consistently as he did in the night. I called the cops once, but they waved me off, as all he had done was walk and stare. Unless he was on my property, the law could not intervene, they told me. So, the strange man continued to wander the block, gazing at my house like it was made of gold. It was unnerving, but I would live, and neither of the others living in the house seemed to really care. I tried to speak to him on occasion, but he never made eye contact with me or said a word to me the entire time. But finally, just a week ago, after another 2 months of this, something happened. He entered my house. The man didn't steal, didn't break anything, didn't make a mess. He just walked around the first floor, looked at the things, and opening doors just to stare into the room that they opened to. I found him on his way out. He pushed past me and left. I had hoped he'd leave a handprint, but he was wearing gloves. After this, I took the logical course of action and installed cameras throughout the house. They weren't very well hidden, nor inconspicuous, but they were durable and hard to move around or turn off. So if something was done to them, I would see. It also ranked the power bill up quite high, but I could afford it. And I also signed up for self-defense lessons, but I had only gone twice when the man came back, once again while I was away. The cameras caught him, but he was disguised and careful, so it did little other than prove someone had been there. This time, he went directly upstairs and made his rounds walking around, and to my horror, entered Max's room. Thankfully though, the darkest outcome did not come true. He simply walked around that room too, analyzing it right before walking out. He stayed for at least 2 hours, occasionally jotting notes down into a journal I could not see due to how gritty the night vision cams were. And around 25 minutes before I would arrive home, and 10 minutes before my shift would end, he put the journal away and jogged out of my house. He wasn't rushing, as you could clearly see, but he didn't know he couldn't be found while he was in there. The man left as nonchalantly as he came, speed walking into the woods surrounding the neighborhood. I came to the cops and told them. They promised to keep one of the officers nearby to watch the house and advised me to keep the lights on even if it cost electricity. I also bought some of the extra locks to fortify my home even more. But I fear it may not be enough. He may still find a way in regardless. That was yesterday. Now I'm hiding in my bedroom, waiting. What should I do now? Assuming I even live to see your comments. Number 2. My grandpa's ranch. My grandpa wasn't unusual or anything, except for the fact that he won't let anyone stay at his ranch after sunset. Though his ranch was located on the countryside, which is 5 miles away from where we live, we do visit him from time to time. Grandpa died in 2016 due to a heart attack. I last visited in 2020, after the quarantine went down. I went there to clean the place, so we can stay there for the holidays, away from the virus or diseases. I arrived at 7 p.m. At first, I started hearing rustling noises outside, but I brushed it off thinking it was a wild animal. I went to bed for a little. Then, I started hearing something scratching on wood. I didn't think of it until I realized it was above me. It was coming from the attic. I prepared a bat just in case a wild animal was inside. As I opened the attic door, panicking, I was surprised to see nothing. I was kinda creeped out, but since I didn't believe in paranormal stuff at the time, I thought maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. But suddenly a gust of wind blew on my back, which kinda gave me the goosebumps. After, I looked over to see that the attic window was open. I went over to close it, and as I did, I saw my reflection on the glass, and I also saw someone or something else behind me. I swung my bat fast, in shock, but there was nothing there. A mirror caught my attention, then I saw it. In the mirror, there was a silhouette of many people I had not seen before, all in white. At that moment, I passed out. I woke up sweating in the morning. Also in the morning, I found a very old family history book, and I definitely recognized most of them from last night's incident. In the end, I asked to a preacher to bless the house, but I never did stay there. And to this day, I haven't gone back, and I never plan on doing it. But recently, a family member moved there, which made me remember this night, and I guess that's the reason I'm sharing it here. Number 3. The suitcase. I've worked for 6 years in the airport industry. I hope to be a plane engineer and fix engines, stuff like that. But my boss put me in the suitcase checking. It's boring, but I guess I'll just work my way up over time. In my 2 years of working here, I haven't seen anything serious. I suppose I've been seeing weird things like toys vibrating and sporks, but not anything life-threatening. Until it was a Thursday. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was opening bags, suitcases, etc. when I saw a black suitcase. It had a lock on the zip, but luckily it was unlocked. 110624. That was the input code. I opened it to a stench so dreadful and ghastly that I nearly threw up on the other bags. I looked inside and screamed. A dismembered body with blood, guts, bones, flesh, and meat on different layers of the suitcase with a note. You didn't listen. Neither did you believe. Signed, Mr. Holden. In fear, I called airport security, my boss, and the cops. A year later, and many interviews after the incident, I hate to think who the victim of the murder was, and that they never caught the guy. At the rate they're going, they probably never will. My phone ringing startles me, and unknown numbers calling me. I figured I'll just mess with them. I pick it up to a distorted voice saying,
"Remember, listen, and believe."
My heart drops a million times. It couldn't be. It's impossible. The same thing the note said on the suitcase. I can hear my front door opening, with my heart falling 7 stories. The intruder walks up my stairs. My bedroom door handle turns to a masked man with a machete drenched in blood.
You didn't listen. Neither did you believe.
Number 4. The camping trip. I parked my car in the dirt lot and stepped out. I went to the back, opened the trunk, and grabbed my bag filled with all the items I would need for the weekend of solo camping. So with my backpack on, I stepped onto the trail. After a few minutes of walking, I stopped to take a drink of water, and as I grabbed my bottle, I heard a branch snapping. I whipped my head around with my bottle in my hand and faced the sound, not knowing what I might see. When I turned, I saw a small rodent leap into a bush. Thanks for the scare, I thought. I continued onto the trail, watching the trees stand tall, like nothing could knock them down. I felt the calm spring breeze on my face and watched an assortment of animals scavenge for food until I saw the hill of the campsite I was on. So I picked up the pace until I reached my campsite. I stepped into the campsite and put my bag down. The first 2 hours of being on the campsite were setting things up like a tent, fire, and even a hammock my mom brought me. When it was about noon, I lit the fire I previously built to cook food, and as I ate, I relished the sounds from the forest. I saw the sun starting to set, so I put everything in my tent. I hopped in the tent, zipped it up, and turned a light on inside so I could read for a bit before calling it a night. After reading, I decided to get some rest, so I turned the light off and tried falling asleep. I was about to fall asleep when I heard someone whisper.
You're gonna sleep with the tent unzipped?
I froze and did not respond. But sure enough, my tent was unzipped. So with one swift motion, I zipped it back up and sat up. I was waiting for another whisper, but it never came. Were they helping me? Did they unzip my tent? I had a million thoughts in my head, but I just wanted to forget it. So I put my head down again and closed my eyes. It wasn't even 5 minutes when I heard footsteps circling my tent, over and over. When they suddenly stopped, I began pressing on the tent. My whole body felt so heavy, it was almost hard to breathe. But I took a breath, and then I screamed, "Get the hell away!" Immediately, they stopped pressing on the tent, but then began laughing manically and slowly unzipping my tent while still laughing. My fight or flight instincts kicked in, and only one option presented itself. If I wanted to survive, I had to fight my way out. I got in the most fight-ready position I could get in, but it was hard in a 3-foot-tall tent. As the tent flap fell, I remember a long-limbed, shriveled man laughing at me with a grin that stretched to his ears. I quickly threw a punch with my right hand, and when I saw he fell from the strike, I jumped out of the tent and ran to my car, leaving my stuff. But as I ran, I realized that another thing was chasing me. 2 things were now hot on my tail, and my adrenaline spiked as I heard one of them scream,
Matthew!
It was the voice that had whispered earlier, but instead of a calm, eerie voice, it was a raspy screech. At that point, I made it to my car, hopped in, and peeled out of there. The next day, I cautiously walked onto the campsite. When I got there, all my stuff was there, just the way it was left. The only thing different was a blurb of writing in the dirt that read,
Come back, please. We need your help.
I saw something crawling slowly in the corner of my eye. I turned to face it, but there was nothing. Since then, every time I'm solo camping, even in different woods, it feels like a million eyes are watching me from every angle, and I can never shake their gaze.